It's time for the H2G podcast, and here are your hosts.
All right, so this is Gary43. He says, I feel like Justin is the reason this country has to put directions on shampoo. Do you even know what you're talking about, bro? No, I don't, Gary fucking 43.
Justo.
I have no idea. I don't even use shampoo. I just use 1 3-in-1 body wash, you bastard.
All right, this is from Karen45. How do you feel about being ranked sexiest man on your podcast when Tony looks like a barbecued Kermit the Frog?
Jesus Christ.
Wait a second. Why? That sounds like a Tony riff. Why is Marvin?
Marvin.
That's a Tony riff. That's towards me?
Wow.
Does Christy think having a child on her lap makes her seem more likable? Also, get some sleep. You look tired.
Christy.
Thanks, Breezy. I'm trying.
Adam says, I see ratings must have been down. They recruited someone interesting.
Wow.
Chelsea.
All right.
The burn on the rest of us.
Oh, I mean, thank you, Adam.
Ashley says, I watch the show a lot and I was wondering, are you all changing the name to RT2M? Richie talks too much.
Richie.
I don't know what to say, Ashley, other than I feel like I talk exactly as much as I should. So.
Yeah. Oh boy. Margaret says, is it me or when Tony talks, do you get the feeling he's constipated?
Yeah.
And Tony Ray.
Well, that face right there doesn't really help you.
Welcome to the H2G podcast.
Good evening, everybody. We are about to talk about something very serious, but give me 1 sec because I'm a little hungry. Okay. We're going to talk about something that I think is very important. And I'll give my opinion afterwards, but I'd love to get the group's kind of mentality here. We're talking about sexual harassment in and out of the workplace, not just in the workplace, but out of the workplace as well. And so what I would like to say is from two perspectives, let's discuss what the person who's being harassed can do, like, because that's realistically what are their options and what are the best ways to, in my opinion, as an outside force, potentially help. So I'm going to start this off not with Chelsea because hers is the most important opinion, let's be honest. She probably deals with this a lot more than the rest of us. So I'm going to kick it off to Justin. Justin, what is your take on sexual harassment in the workforce? Let's start there. Have you ever seen it?
First.
Yes, sir.
Well, you know, this is highly topical for me because I just did some training with my new job and they did a wonderful job of presenting some high quality examples of sexual harassment and what it can look like, how it can be masked. Obviously, in my opinion, there's zero tolerance. I think that there's a lot of responsibility when it comes to sexual harassment, and it belongs with everyone. To the victim is as difficult as it may be, given the situation, and there's so many different forms, so it's hard to really generalize this, but it is important that you speak out against it and that you stand up for yourself and that you defend yourself. And I understand how difficult that can be, especially since we're talking in the workplace. To anyone on the outside who witnesses sexual harassment going on, it's also your responsibility. Once you know that it's happened, there is no reason that it should continue happening. If it does, it's your fault because you know that it's happened and you've let it continue. To management that allows it to continue to happen or commits, we'll get to who commits it in a second. To management that has been told about it or seen it and let it go or send it to a warning or a verbal warning or a write-up or whatever your process is for punishment within the workplace. In my opinion, it's absolutely zero tolerance. Nobody should have to go to their job and feel uncomfortable all day. Most people work to pay the bills. Let's be honest. Not everybody got into their dream career. A lot of people work to pay the bills, to keep a roof above their heads, to support their families, to support themselves, to do the things that they want to do. So they've got to be at work. They should not have to go through that process being harassed. And that's a really vague way of putting how I feel about it. I was watching the videos, and it's funny, I think we talked about him before. The guy that plays Ross on Friends was in one of them. And that's the first time I've ever wanted to punch that guy. But they did an example video where he was a member of management and had just helped this young lady get into a better position within the firm or whatever it was. But he essentially used the position and the fact that she just got a raise or promoted to make a pass. And then when that pass failed, he went right into, backpedal mode. Well, that's, that I was just, I'm being an affectionate boss. I care about the people. That was nothing, right? Just trying to backpedal because, oh crap, right? Sexual harassment, if it gets found out, can be, grave punishment. But I think that the bigger issue here is the fact that it never gets found out, right? Or it gets swept under the rug so fucking frequently. And I've seen it in the workplace. I'm going to be very careful to not state any names, but I left a company because it was happening to a friend. The person committing the crime was the absolute top of the boss level. The only person above him was the franchisees, and they didn't do anything about it. So I had to leave because I couldn't be a member of management with the company that was going to allow it to continue happening. And that person, the person that was the victim of the harassment in this scenario, I believe just left the job, had stayed for another 3 or 4 years because of her potential to move into management. She dealt with that for 3 to 4 years. I can't imagine what that feels like for the individual. So as far as in the workplace, I feel just like I do other things, it should be 100% zero tolerance. And I feel like the responsibility belongs with everyone. Now, to the people in the workplace committing the sexual harassment, that's not what you're here for. Okay, you are not here to pick up a member of the opposite or same sex to have relations with outside of work. You don't get to decide whether or not you have interactions with them in that manner. And you don't get to, as long as I'm around, you don't get to act on it. I hate that it's happening, and I'm not in every place where it's happening, because I would just smack the fucking shit out of somebody every time I saw it. It pisses me off, to be completely honest. You're not here for it. You're here to work. You shouldn't be forcing yourself on anybody, whether it be mentally, physically, emotionally, in any standard, using your power to get what you want out of that person, or objective. Man, this could go on forever. Objectification is another one that's huge in the workplace, and it's disgusting. I'll shut up and let somebody else talk, because I feel like I'm running in circles about how it shouldn't be allowed at all, and it's everyone's responsibility.
Actually, I'm going to swing over to Chelsea, because Justin kind of hit a lot of the points, and I'm sure you've dealt with every one of those points that Justin had talked about. So, Chelsea, as a woman, I'm going to give you guys a statistic here, and then I'd like you to comment on your experiences. 40% of all women experience sexual harassment on some level in the workforce, and only 25% of those 40% choose to actually report it. Most noted is the retaliation from the company, because again, I think that's Justin kind of mentioned it earlier, and I think that's kind of part of the problem is, in an ideal world, we could just report things and they get taken care of. Or as Justin mentioned, sometimes they don't get taken care of. But the reality for a lot of women is, as Justin mentioned, sometimes it's people in power who are doing these things. And then when they are scorned, so to speak, they retaliate. They give you less opportunities. The company's going to knock down the fact that if Chelsea reported something, well, she might not have an opportunity for promotion. And that's a conscious thing that women know and have to think about and navigate. It's very challenging to be a woman in the workforce, not just from what we're referring to now, but in general. But Chelsea, could you please kind of give the guys in our audience some of your experiences in the workforce?
Yeah. Compared to a lot of people that I know, I feel like I'm somewhat fortunate in what I've experienced in workplaces. I have been rather fortunate in that most of the places that I have worked, I have not had a single issue. They've been very respectful, and I haven't felt like there has been anything that has happened because I am a woman, whether that be sexual harassment or anything otherwise. But I have had, I can think of 2 companies in the past. Again, I'm not going to name names. One of them had a predominantly male workforce, and a lot of people in management were very CEO in the family that ran the company. And in that particular situation, it was somebody in executive management that was friends with the owners of the company that used to, I would say, manipulate conversation to try to get me to like compliment him or kind of like edge things along in a way that would make it seem like I was doing it, but I picked up on it instantly. And so I would usually turn it into like a snarky insult instead. To kind of back out of it, because I was like, I'm not going to compliment you or have anything to do with you. But I had a couple coworkers that were specifically on my team that I knew and trusted. And I was like, if you ever see a situation where like I'm giving you like that look, or you see this person going into a room with me and there's nobody else in the room, like please like come in there and give me a reason that you need me to leave, because if he tries anything, I'm going to get fired because I will hit him. I tend to probably be a little bit more feisty than what some women are. So I know in some situations, a lot of women would not be comfortable with that. I will walk out of a job, no problem, and be like, F you, I don't care. I'm not dealing with this. I'll take you to court before I'll deal with it. Like that's my mentality. But I know a lot of other women are either they don't have the freedom to do that, or they don't feel comfortable doing that because in the ways that they've been raised or encountered things, it's kind of shut them down and kept them from speaking out. And I tend to be very vocal. And then in one other situation, it wasn't actually while I worked there. It was after I had left the company. And the guy who used to be my supervisor actually made a pass at me. And he's in a committed relationship with somebody. I was married at the time. And he's like, I know you're married and it's complicated, but if you ever wanted to hook up type of thing, which was very uncomfortable for me because I'm like, well, thankfully I'm not in that company role anymore. So I can just ignore him and pretend he doesn't exist and not have to ever see him again. But it was just like one of those situations where it's like, I feel like most of what's happened with me, I think somebody is just like a friend or a coworker or like somebody that can be trusted. And then something like that happens. Then you're like, this just kind of ruined the entire atmosphere of where I'm at. And inevitably, both those companies, I've left both of them in the past because it wasn't a good place to be. And I know some people experience things that are much more direct, I would say, than what I have experienced. And I hope that if that's the case, if you can't go to HR because they're best friends with the CEO or the family that runs the company, just start job hunting and find something else. It's not worth, being miserable and worrying about what's going to happen to you. There are other jobs out there. And there are ones out there where you don't have to put up with that. So don't.
Thank you for sharing, Chelsea. I appreciate that. Yeah, one of the things, and you had mentioned it earlier, and I think that's the key word, is we're talking about women. And a lot of women tend to have children. And let's be honest, that usually the primary caregiver at the end of the day. We can talk about men, this, that, and the other, but the bottom line is women have to make sacrifices. They always have to. So sometimes they don't have the luxury of just walking away because they have a family. And then, for instance, okay, well, I'm going to quit and look for a job. How are we going to take care of it? So it's really challenging, honestly. It's such a weird paradigm. I'm just going to give a little bit of my own experience just as a manager. And then I'm going to go off to Tony because I really would like to get his opinion on something in particular. So as a manager, I have about 42 employees. So one of the things I think is crucial that I always talk to my employees about, and yes, we give them a training and I have to do my own training as a manager. But I think it's really important to understand if you're being sexually harassed, whether you're a woman or a man, if you're being sexually harassed, the first thing you need to do is document it yourself and be as specific as you can be: time, date, location, what was said, etc. You need to constantly be documenting not just that incident, but subsequently during work. And the reason being is, as we've discussed, sometimes companies aren't in your best interest. It's very important to document this stuff, because beyond just when you inevitably, hopefully, go to report, sometimes companies will try to use your performance as ways to let you go. So when you start documenting, when the instances occurred, if it's reported officially to HR, and you have all of that documented, when they try to say your performance dropped, you have an absolute direct link to why it was dropping. And that's very important. Quick example, Andrew Cuomo, governor of New York, going through a lot of bull crap. I'm not going to get into all of the details, but the bottom line is he is the epitome of what we're discussing. And a couple of the women were let go based on performance. And lo and behold, it's from him harassing them and the performance dropped. And this is exactly what I'm talking about for them. And I'm not saying they didn't do it. We don't know, as journalism only kind of goes off the big story. We don't know if they documented it, but that's exactly why it's important to document what's going on during your period of time. Because what's happening is some of these women are being portrayed that they started dropping in performance, and that's why they were let go, not due to what we most likely infer. So super important to document anything that's going on. Outside of that, once you document it, then you do have to start making determining factors, as Chelsea's point, because sometimes it's better to walk away than try to fight the system. And that's just the reality. So Tony, what I'd like to talk to you about is, as you're a husband, you've known Carrie for years, and I'm sure you've heard a lot of stories about this. So coming from the partner's perspective, what do you try to do? How has it happened? Things of that nature. Can you let me know how you try to support Carrie when these things happen? Because I'm sure they've inevitably happened to her. Like I said, 40% of women deal with this.
Yeah. I was a manager for 9 years. So,
yeah.
I managed around 110 employees when I worked in the restaurant business. So I was very big on Title VI and Title VII. 6 is discrimination, Title VII is sexual harassment. But I would tell Carrie, don't allow for things to be uncomfortable for you. Make sure you state stuff. Basically everything that you said, make sure that you take it to the appropriate people that need. Don't take it to, a friend. Don't take it to another coworker. You have to go to your direct, and you have to make sure that your direct knows. And then I also would then file it with your human resources, division or employee relations division, whatever one you have to file that information with. Make sure you do both, because a lot of times what ends up happening is you tell your boss, and Justin hit on this, and then it just stays there. It just stays on the desk. Now, it's not like it's a document. Sometimes documentation is not really taken. It's more of a verbal thing. So, that just stays there and nothing happens from it. So you always want to make sure that you go both avenues. You go to your boss and you go the other route. For me, Carrie is, what's the right word? She doesn't like conflict. She's conflict avoidant. So she would rather endure than to fight. So for me, in my position, I always have to be that person that says, don't put up with bullshit. You have to value yourself for who you are, and don't let other people undervalue you by, just because you're attractive or you're a female or, whatever it could be for any of the people that are out there. Don't allow for that to skew you from what needs to happen. Sexual harassment is not allowed, and it shouldn't be allowed. Therefore, you have to do what Justin said in the beginning and what everybody else has said as well. You have to make sure that you say something. But this is the big one, and that hit home with me, and Justin said it. For the people that see it, but stay silent. You know, just because you don't say anything, it's not going to go away because now you've allowed it. So if you have a child and a child does something wrong and you don't reprimand that child for that, that child thinks that it's okay to do it. Daddy, mommy, uncle, aunt, whoever, they didn't say anything. So this behavior must be allowed. So if you don't say anything, or if your manager doesn't say anything, then, you know, you need to jump on that boat that Chelsea talked about, and you need to get the hell out because it's unhealthy. You don't need to be in that kind of environment. And the big thing I told people when I was in management was, don't worry about retaliation, because retaliation is the next phase of getting somebody to lose their job. Okay, sexual harassment, you don't have to lose your job. It could be something that could be fixed. It could be a seminar that's taken. It could be hours doing this. It could be multiple things. You don't have to lose your job for it. But if you retaliate if I was to retaliate towards Chelsea because she said something about me, I automatically lose my job. Don't worry about certain things. Things will be taken care of. And if you're in a business that isn't set up that way, then yes, you need to get out. So I hope I answered your question. I mean, this stuff it's very serious for me because, you know, when you work in the restaurant business, you dealing with 18-year-olds, 20-year-olds, 21-year-olds. You might have some lifers, but mostly you're dealing with young people. And what they don't understand is just because you think it's funny, it could be offensive. And I'll give an example. We were joking around before we did this podcast, okay? How do I know what I'm saying doesn't offend Chelsea? How do I know that is, you know, unwelcomed conversation that could potentially make it awkward for Chelsea? I don't know that, but I need to be more mindful when I say those joking things. And therefore, if I do say something, I hope Chelsea would know that in our relationship that she could call me out and say, hey, I didn't find that funny. I was offended, whatever. And then we can go that route. But you have to be that person that states that stuff up front as a person and what you don't state. And then also for Chelsea for, you know, if it was offensive. So, I mean, it's a two-way street, but mostly you control the vehicle that you drive, which is you. So if you're in a work environment, just keep it a work environment. That's the best way to do it. So hopefully that helped. I'm sorry.
No, it definitely did. You know, I think that's just really important because, you know, at the end of the day, we need, you know, as we discussed, we want to support people that are going through it, but it's very important if you're dealing with it yourself, that you understand you have to internalize it. You have to deal with it. You can't rely on hopefully another coworker to back you up. And that's why I'm saying, you know, the documentation things, like you have to respect yourself enough to go through your own avenues. You can't really hope. I mean, well, you can hope, but there's so many times where people are going to let you down. And particularly in something like this, you're your own agency. And that's really important that you understand that, you know, like in life, the only person who can really make sure you're getting taken care of is yourself. And I really hope anyone who's dealing with this understands what they can or can't do, again, based on their freedoms. Because I think the easiest solution, if management isn't helping, is walk away, as we discussed. And that's great. But, you know, Marvin works in an industry that's slightly different than the rest of ours. So Marvin, like, how does it work over there? Have you ever seen anything like that when you're on set and things of that nature? Because I don't know anything about your industry, quite frankly, other than I watch at the end of the day.
I haven't seen it on set personally, but I know that it happens. It happens all the time, especially in this industry. on the production side, on the actor side, because I haven't seen it with my own eyes, but I know actors, I know actresses who have been in that position. And there was a recent film I did last year, and there's an actress I worked with, and she said that she was working with the director, and the director was really demanding. He was just really demanding, and he wanted to know about her preparation process. So he took her into a room and he shut off the lights. And when she told me when he did that, she immediately just left the room. And so I was thinking, I'm like, man, like you're thinking you're placing your trust and your time, with this individual, and here they are abusing it, going beyond their power, doing whatever they want to do, saying whatever they want to do because they think that you need this job. They think you need something from them. So they got this false pretense in their mind whether, from the director's standpoint, him harassing her, thinking that, okay, she needs me, so she'll capitulate to anything that I ask her to do. Whether that may be a sexual favor or anything, but the fact of the matter is that he made her uncomfortable. And whether he touched her or not, I think that to that point of uncomfortability, like that's unacceptable. Like it's no admission of guilt, but that's just like what you said earlier, Richie, about Governor Cuomo. Now, he didn't admit guilt, but he admitted to making women feel uncomfortable. Well, that's the whole point of what we're talking about. If an individual gets to the point where they feel so uncomfortable, like where you are compromising their peace of mind coming to work, like you are harassing that individual, like there needs to be more sexual harassment awareness, because I think even people in the highest position, and people in the lowest position, they don't even realize that they're doing it. I've worked in the restaurant industry too, Tony, and I've seen this before, man. It's actually unfortunate because whether it's in the restaurant industry or in the corporate world, like you'll see like women in a relationship or guys, from my experience, what I've seen, I've seen someone in a relationship and this guy come on to this girl, keep coming on to her, and she's just rejecting his advances, saying, I'm not interested. And what he jokingly comes back and says, oh, I don't care. Oh, I don't care. So, like, you don't care. Like, bro, you will never have a job anywhere. Like, if you have that kind of mentality. So there's no such thing as company loyalty. At that point, there's no such thing as employee loyalty. Like, I don't care how many conversations you've had or how much camaraderie that there is in the office. If you are making a guy or a woman feel uncomfortable, by the things that you say, by the looks that you give them, whether it's an objectifying look or not, like that is equivalent to harassment. So at that point, you should just leave. Like, I appreciate all of you sharing your experiences, because I think all of us have been in that point where we have seen it happen to somebody else. And at that point, you're actually like, do I speak on that person's behalf? Because I understand what you're saying, Tony. Like, some people are non-confrontational, particularly women in certain circumstances, having kids, being in a marriage, just, like moving, getting a new place. There's so many like stakes that are high. And like the fact that these guys know that, or women for that matter, they know that and they abuse it. So I just think that there needs to be more sexual harassment training, more in-depth aptitude tests for guys that just don't get it, or for women that don't get it, because it's an ongoing issue. And there's a movie that I don't know if you've all have seen it, but it's called Disclosure. It's got Michael Douglas and Demi Moore in it, and this just touches on what we're talking about, just sexual harassment in the corporate world, and it just going so far. It's such a delicate topic. You just hope that people use more common sense and use more awareness.
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you, Marv. I think the one thing I would also like to say is, regardless of your gender, if you feel uncomfortable and somebody's actions are making you uncomfortable, then you should consider, like, at that moment, what you need to do. Like I was saying, if you want to document it, if you need to confront them, if you're that type of person. Because I think that was great what Tony mentioned about Carrie, and Marvin already pointed that out, is some people don't want that confrontation. And that's why I always find it challenging, because like here's kind of how I approach things. I've tried to help some of my coworkers before. And when I was younger, I was a lot more brash about it. And I would just immediately just, get in there. But what I've learned, as Tony mentioned, is some people don't want that. They just want to just walk away from it. And by you putting yourself in there, now you've already escalated it at the end of the day, right? Because now this other person who is harassing the harassee knows you've seen it and you're being confrontational, so you don't know how they're going to react to that. Now, in an ideal world where it's rainbows and sunshines, they can be like, okay, I'm sorry, man. And they're going to apologize to the person they're harassing. They're going to understand. But the reality is there's a lot of knuckleheads that don't get it. And again, like, it's hard to talk about men and entitlement. And I don't want to get too far into that, but you never know how someone's going to react. So I always think it's in your best interest to talk to the person you saw getting harassed and see what they want to do. So, because some people would be like, yeah, that'd be great if you could speak up because I don't feel comfortable doing it. But maybe he'll understand if you say it, kind of thing. Then perfect. Because then you can go up to that person later. It doesn't have to be in the moment. And I don't think it's your place to make that decision for the harassee, quite frankly. So having said that, that's just kind of my opinion. That's how I try to treat things. Now, obviously, if I'm, when I'm at work and I see one of my employees do it, different conversation. But I'm just saying, if I see a coworker, that's how I try to respect the coworker's boundaries. But if it's my employee, I have to treat it a completely different scenario because we gonna have to go to HR right then and there. So I don't know if anyone else has anything they'd like to say. So I'm going to open up the floor first. Is there anything anyone else would like to say about the subject? I know it's extremely broad. Honestly, we could do a whole week on this, quite frankly, and get more specific on the scope, but nonetheless.
Oh, for sure. I did just want to say, because we had talked about outside the workplace too, and looks like we're going to run out of time before we end. There are numerous avenues that you can go down to get help. I know there's hotlines. I wish I had some of this stuff handy right now, but there's not only hotlines, but you can make sure that if it's digital, which is like, digital bullying is for some reason the new trend in the past, 10, 20 years. That's probably the exact same with sexual harassment. Don't hit that block button. Don't be afraid to hit that block button. It's not going to do you any harm. But if it's left the workplace or it's outside of the workplace and you're being harassed all the time, make sure that you reach out to the appropriate authorities. We've got some information that I'll throw here in the credits somewhere that you can call to get help. I just wanted to kind of comment on what you said, Richie. I do agree. I don't think that it's necessarily your place to immediately bring it to a manager's attention because that could make it worse. For that person, you definitely need to talk to the harassee first before you just decide on their behalf. But don't just stand by and do nothing at all. I think that was the point that really was driven home for me. Is I feel like you're just as guilty as the person doing the act if you're just going to watch it happen and turn a blind eye.
Yeah, I agree. Tony, you were about to say something? I didn't mean to cut you off, brother.
No, you're good. I just wanted to say that, if you're a manager, listen to what Richie said and what Justin kind of said a little bit. You have to do your due diligence. And, I had someone come in, and I won't use names, obviously, but the person told me, hey, this is something happened, and I just kind of want to talk to you about it. I don't want to report it. So I could tell that the person was scared. And I said, oh, that's fine. I said, everything that you say, will dictate the actions that will be taken next. I just want to be upfront with you. I am here to listen and to help out in any way that I can. And so she opened up a little bit, and after that, she had left. But when she left, I had her write everything down. Kind of like what Richie talked about earlier. And then before she left, I told her, I said, listen, I do have to put in, a little form. It's not going to state, all the information. I just want to make sure that people understand that this had happened, and, we won't do an investigation or anything, today. So an investigation is going to happen, but I know that it's not going to be today. So I'm not lying to her, but it definitely was going to happen. So when she left, I filed that information with, our HR department, and I left it really brief. I said, this person, this happened, doesn't really want it to go much further, but definitely wanted us to talk about it. She wanted to talk about it. And they said, you did the right thing. But I had a manager that had been with the company for 20 plus years. I won't say the name. And he told me that, the 20 years he had been there, he had never filed a Title VI or Title VII. Ever, the 20 years that he was there. I was the general manager for that store for the first 4 months, and I had already filed 45 Title VIIs and Title VIs together because I was trying to create change in that environment. So if you're a manager, you have to do your due diligence and do what's best for your employees. You're never going to grow your company, your whatever it is, if you don't do what's right for your employees, because you're just going to keep turning and burning your employees. Once you have, what's the point of training somebody just to get them to leave? Because your environment is unhealthy. Invest that time in your environment for your employees, and you'll be able to retain more employees, and then your business will be more prosperous. The mindset has to change. You have to do what's right for the people that are working for you. That's all I have to say, Richie. Sorry, I kind of took a long time to say do what's right for the people that work for you, but yeah, there you go.
No, I agree. It's very important to make sure people have a safe environment, and I think that's the problem nowadays. Is for a lot of women, that's not the case, as we just talked about with statistics. Because again, we're talking 40%. We're talking, that's what's reported. We don't know what's unreported. So
yeah, that number
it's
high.
Staggering. It's certainly higher. It's certainly higher. So it's staggering. It's very disappointing. We didn't really have too much time to talk about it outside workforce, but I mean, Justin already kind of hit it, and we say it all the time. It's really important to, I think when it's outside, I do take things a little differently than I do inside. I'll say that much. If I see somebody harassing someone, I do like instigate myself into that situation, because I don't treat it as like this woman's going to see this man again and they're going to have to interact multiple times. So I usually just try to get in there, but I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but that's just kind of how I approach it. But I think we're pretty much out of time on this topic, unfortunately, but who knows, the H2G podcast, we're always willing to have discussion. So if it's something you guys are interested in, feel free to comment, and we're always willing to talk about it more. It'd be really good to get some perspectives. Maybe you guys can share something that we didn't really hit, or maybe you guys disagree. It'd be good to get your ideas on that. So you're watching the H2G podcast. Stay tuned to The Wire. It's coming up very shortly tonight. And stay tuned for tomorrow. Chris has got a little fun game. Until then, see you guys.